People tend to say that there's a dark side to every fandom and how, no matter how great a fandom may seem, no fandom is perfect. And the Brony fandom is definitely not an exception. Of course, there were people who were still enjoying themselves with the show, but then there were people who were really starting to feel less interested in it. And I'm not exactly sure where this came from, because at the time, I just thought that MLP was a really, really good show. And I just found out what the word for it is. It's called a broken base. A broken base is where there are two sides to a fandom based on the source material that created it. There's the side that still loves it and is loyal to it, and there's the side that now hates what it's become. And I think the first instance of this was when I saw some DeviantArt post stating that they need to turn Twilight back into a unicorn to make it all equal. There would be 2 Pegasi, there'd be 2 unicorns, and there'd be 2 Earth ponies. Now, this was when I wasn't fully aware of the show and its universe, so I wasn't exactly sure where this was coming from. But by the end of Season 3 and as Season 4 started rolling about, I started to see the side of the fandom that was losing interest in the show after Lauren Faust left. Those who think that it became horrible halfway through Season 2, I have no idea how. And the worst part about this is that they never really explain it very well. They just say what they think without telling us why they think this way. And whenever they do present an argument, it just doesn't feel like it makes sense. And it just gets very out of hand. I was starting to see these types of comments all over the place, and whenever I tried to figure out what they were talking about, they would tell me what they thought in a way that just didn't make sense. They say things like the characters have become horrible, or the show is running out of ideas, or it's become an incredibly painful marketing ploy. There were changes made to the series that have completely destroyed what Lauren Faust created. It just kept building up and up and up and up, and I'm just thinking to myself, it's My Little Pony, guys. I mean, this is a show that is better than it has any right to be. It's still telling good stories, and it's still doing some good development with the characters. I really don't know where all of this is coming from. And this is what it was like before Season 4 started. I mean, like, Season 3, a lot of people just felt mixed about, and it was around the time when people were getting really, really antsy about the Equestria Girls release because they just thought it was part of a big sellout. But what really started for me was when people started talking about Season 4. It was the day after the season premiere had aired, and I was looking through DeviantArt to see reviews of the episode. And that's when I came across someone who gave the episode a C-. I looked at the review, and it was by somebody named Cuddlepug. And I scrolled through the review, and it just seemed like the typical thing that somebody would type if they were some kind of person who thought that Lauren Faust was what made the show special. They say that Season 2 was mixed and Season 3 was relatively not good. But aside from that, the episode review just wasn't good even as an episode review. There were obvious flaws in the arguments, and there were holes in the criticisms that could have easily been cleared up if someone properly explained it to them. This was before I created my MisAnthro Pony DeviantArt profile, and I just felt like I kinda had to rebel against this review that I didn't think was good. Not just because it was negative, but because nothing that Cuddlepug typed seemed to make any sense. I obviously decided to compare his review to everybody else's review, and I liked their reviews more. Maybe it was because I related to their optimism a lot more that I liked their reviews more, but it just felt like that there was more detail and they went further into what they thought about the episode and what made each point good or bad. And because they were video reviews of the episodes, it provided a visual experience that made it a lot more fun to look at. I'm not exactly sure why it started there, but it felt like ever since that Cuddlepug review of Princess Twilight Sparkle, I've been cautious. Like, I've literally been on the lookout for future opinions on Season 4 and its episodes. I just scrolled through comment sections, and I just wanted to see who liked the episode, who didn't like the episode, who was fine with where the show was going, who was complaining about it going through seasonal rot. It seemed like a really stupid thing to waste my time on, but I suppose that when you come to love and appreciate something as much as I did, you tend to worry about its reputation and how it's being seen in the eyes of the public. I really was starting to worry about what people thought of the show and its lore and its characters and her. I continued to watch the episodes and rate them based on my own amusement, and all the while I was still looking at what other people thought of the episode. And through it all, I saw a fair amount of both sides. There were people who liked the episode, there were people who didn't like the episode, different people enjoyed different types of episodes, and so forth and so forth. Now, people not liking individual episodes, I was fine with that. That didn't really bother me that much. But when I came across a comment that was speaking of how the show as a whole was beginning to degrade, I would just feel completely annoyed by their statement, I would just roll my eyes, and I would work up the energy to move on to the next person. And as Season 4 started to reach its later segments, I was starting to notice that there were members amongst the Brony analysis community on YouTube that were also starting to participate in this broken base. There was Digibro with Three's a Crowd, there was Tommy Oliver with It Ain't Easy Being Breezy's and Mod Pie, there was Golden Fox with his opening statement in Testing 1, 2, 3, and there were the mixed reactions to episodes like Daring Don't or Power Ponies. I heard there were people who liked it and there were people who didn't like it. At first I was willing to understand several of these criticisms, and then the Equestria games happened. And you all know the story to this one. Everyone was pissed off that it was a Spike episode and that it didn't focus on the thing that they wanted the episode to focus on, and they just kept bitching and bitching about how it was a completely missed opportunity. I mean, it did feel awkward that it was named the Equestria Games and it focused on Spike, but I didn't let it ruin the episode for me. I saw the value in Spike's struggle and the moral that the episode was getting across. People who were complaining about how it didn't focus on the games, they were doing it so badly that they didn't care for the point that the episode was making. These weren't reviews of the episode. These were people bitching about how they didn't get what they wanted. And the worst part about this is that everybody who was hating on the Equestria games didn't care for the explanations that were coming from the people who were defending the episode. The broken base situation was at least questionable before, but this was when it was just becoming incredibly ridiculous. Knowing this now, looking back to all of the negative reception that Season 4 had been receiving up to that point, it all started coming across as incredibly biased. For every single misconception made towards an episode, there is an episode review amongst the analysis community that completely debunks all of the criticisms. Now, I am very well aware of the show's imperfections, and I'm willing to admit that the writers are capable of making mistakes. But if you're gonna go through that whole the show's writing has become horrible route, it has to go beyond simply saying I didn't like this week's episode or I didn't like the change in staff. And yet, time and again, I would come across a comment stating that Lauren Faust was what made the show special, and without her, the characters have become incredibly incompetent. I was starting to see this everywhere I went. I saw it on YouTube, I saw it on DeviantArt, I saw it on Derpy Boru, I saw it on fan forums. One time, I even saw it on Equestria Daily. And as you'd expected, it resulted in people from both sides of the argument getting into fits and fights. People just kept on going out of their way in order to defend their own opinion on the episode. And as time went on, the arguments were becoming increasingly nasty. Upon seeing all of this, I was just getting so many flashbacks from my experiences with so many other fandoms, such as Pokemon, Naruto, Sonic the Hedgehog, Final Fantasy, and okay, to be fair, that broken base is kind of warranted. But you understand where I'm getting at, right? The Brony fandom was supposed to be special, and now it's just turning into every other fandom that I've ever been associated with. Instead of people uniting in their fascination for the show, it was degrading into a bunch of arguments over which era was the best one, or who's right and who's wrong about what's currently going on with the show's status, wanting to dismiss the show despite that they're the ones who made it popular in the first place. There are people who used to like the show that now completely despise both it and the fandom, purely out of spite. Don't believe me? Scroll through the comment section of Tommy Oliver's Appaloosa's Most Wanted review for a couple of hours. And to think that this has been going on since halfway through Season 2. I could only imagine what it could have been like if I was a Brony in 2010. If I came across any of this sooner. Seeing fans of the show fighting, seeing the comments getting worse every day. A worse part about it is that the Brony analysis community, the people that others looked up to give a reliable outlook on the show, it was starting to affect them too. They were starting arguments in the Rift, saying all sorts of shit about each other just because they couldn't agree on the show's progression. They were starting to take each other way too seriously, allowing their self-serving egos to get the best of them. They all used to be really good friends, united in their interest for the show. Now it seemed like they were starting to hate each other. And for what? Because they didn't want to feel like they'd be proven wrong about the quality of this week's episode? They just kept going at each other's throats like they were owed money or something. And it just happened so fast, and it was escalating so quickly, that it's hard to pinpoint when it really started. These people were supposed to be friends, and now, they've become completely detached from each other. These are not the same role models that I looked up to, and they were all setting a bad example for viewers of their content. It was just so depressing. And the very sad thing about all this is that, at least for me, all of that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst of it, by far, was that single running theme, that single fucking running theme that everybody was bringing up throughout Season 4 and some point in Season 3, the Flanderization of Pinkie Pie. This was the one thing that nobody would ever shut the hell up about. Every single week it was like, was Pinkie Pie out of character? Was she being too annoying? Was she acting too childish? At first it was questionably progressive in Season 2 and to a lesser extent Season 3, and then it just fucking exploded in Season 4. Out of nowhere, for no reason, this suddenly became a hot topic for everybody watching the series. They were all talking about this like it was something that's never happened before, and that it's become a main detriment to later seasons of the series. It was getting so bad that they started criticizing her every single week for absolutely no reason. They would constantly bring her up, and they would act contradictory to things that she's done in the past. Oh, Pinkie Pie's using her head to ring a bell. What about that time she used her head to knock against somebody's door? Oh, but she was being immature when the Everfree Forest was invading and she decided to play with a coloring book. Right. And that scene where she was having fun with how silly her voice sounded at the expense of the rest of the town when they were about to lose their homes to a cow stampede, back in Season 1, is a very fitting example of how mature and aware her character used to be. And that's the straw man argument that people kept on using. They kept on saying that she used to be good, she used to be more mature, she used to be less childish. Would you care to explain how exactly? Well, that's because she became flanderized in later seasons. Fuck you! She was never flanderized if she's still acting the same way as she always was. Explain to me, when did she start to act any different from how she used to act? Point to me at that moment. Was it the part where she wouldn't stop talking and took up too much screen time for the sake of a joke? Because I can tell you for certain that she did that kind of stuff in Season 1. I'd say Seasons 2 and 3, but apparently that's around the time that she started gaining detractors. The analysis were hating on her. DeviantArt commenters were hating on her. YouTube commenters were hating on her. Derpy Boru commenters were hating on her. Fuck, after a while, even the Facebook commenters were talking about it. The growing detraction towards her just kept on growing and growing week by week. And every single time I saw a comment stating anything bad about her, I just wanted to punch them in the face. And at the time, I thought of Cuddlepug as one of the biggest offenders of this. Nearly every single episode review that he was putting out where Pinkie Pie made an appearance in, he just had to have something to say about her. Even in the Equestria games where she literally did nothing. It's as if no matter how she was written by which writer for that episode, everybody just hated her for it. When Pinkie Pride first came out, I honestly let out a sigh of relief because nobody had said anything bad about her that week. And then Philly Vanilli happened. I knew from the moment that this episode aired that everybody was going to use it as a straw man fallacy for how Pinkie Pie was degrading into a terrible character. Oh, what's that? She made Fluttershy cry? She made Pinkie and Rarity cry, you stupid morons, and in a much more intentional and mean-spirited way. If people were hating her before that episode, oh, they were really starting to hate her now. And even with all that in mind, nothing quite prepared me for the horrifying news through this video that I saw months later.
As usual, I could underestimate, the public of the internet. And, there's always going to be those bunch of people who do nothing more than either troll, spread hateful comments, etc. There's always the amateur responses and feedback that is always thrown to the deep ends of hell, etc. However, one of the comments stated something that I had no idea what was going on. I briefly just looked through the web and found something out of what was going on with Amy, Katie and Rogers, who wrote Philly Vanilli. And apparently, not only were people pissed off about the way Pinkie was written, but she was given death threats. I was completely unaware of this, and Jesus Christ. I knew that I was going to get myself into a bit of a mess where people would disagree with me on on something controversial, but I didn't expect something this big, something this notorious. So to give my piece on the matter, I had no involvement with that whatsoever.
So that's it. You really had to go there, didn't you? Your spitefulness towards Pinkie Pie, your growing hatred for her, got so bad that you sent death threats to Amy Keaton Rogers after all the times you told her that you loved her writing. Is that it? Is that what all of this is to you? You constantly demand that the writers give you well-written stories and episodes, and when you don't get that, you send them hate mail and death threats? Death threats. Just because of how much you started to hate Diane. It was all a complete fucking waste of time! All of it! All of... It was all leading to this!
Why death threats? Are you gonna beat this overreactive to those of you who ever did that? Who gave that to her? Do I even need to say it? It is a huge disservice to yourself, to the Brony fandom, but I think it's even more screwed up that somebody, somewhere, somehow would get this overreactive, get this over the top, and throw it towards Amy because they weren't pleased with the way the episode was written. I'm utterly speechless. You've given us a bad name by doing that. Just fucking wow.
This is it? This is what I put up with all those hateful comments for? All that time I spent doing my best to defend you and stick up for you, and it turns out you're no better than the idiots of the YouTube comments section who blindly hate you. This is bullshit. I cannot believe I convinced myself for a single microsecond that this fandom was special. You spent less time uniting each other in the very thing that has given you your identity and spent more time thinking of new reasons to hate each other. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? How humiliating that feels? Why the hell did I even bother? I should have known better than to believe that this fandom was special. I can't even think of a reason as to why I wanted to be in this fandom to begin with. I don't know why you wasted so much time trying to persuade others that you're better than each other when you're all the exact same. You're a selfish population of people who don't care about anyone but themselves. And the same goes for you, Bronalysis community. All that time you spent tricking me into believing that you were a beacon of hope for this fandom. And as it turns out, you are some of the worst examples of people who ever started watching this show in the first place. I don't even know why I ever wanted to be associated with any of you. You're all a bunch of lazy, ignorant, hypocritical, overreacting, self-entitled, non-negotiable, overbearing, know-it-all, ill-mannered, backstabbing, egotistical, trash-talking, confusing, argumentative, selfish, ass-kissing, oblivious, certifiably insane jerks!